All righty. Oh, Beverly Pincus. I'm not sure I know who Beverly is, but welcome, Beverly. I
You
see
know who
that
I
you.
am. I was in your storytelling class at Aleph.
Beverly! Hi, Beverly.
I won't advertise what I told my story about, but you may remember with me saying that.
I do, I do remember that for
And I'm
sure.
sorry I'm off video, but I'm sick and I'm like all cuddled up in bed and in
That's
pajamas.
okay. We welcome everybody. So welcome to Minyan Oneg Shabbat, our Wednesday night teachings. Tonight, I have the profound pleasure of welcoming my dear friend, Rabbi Geoff Basik, who'll tell you a little bit more about himself. But one thing that you should know is I've known Jeff longer than I've known any of you, including Renee, who is busy making soup for tomorrow night. We've got about 6 people coming over, and 2 of whom are Reconstructionist rabbis. One is a Jewish
Like
renewal
me.
rabbi. Like you, that's right. So I've known, hey, Mitzi, welcome. I've known Reb Jeff since 1982, something like that, because my daughter's 27 and yours older than that, now with 2 children. And Jeff and I have, like you say, a lot to kibitz about, and a lot of seriousness as well. So I'm not going to say anything more about you, Reb Jeff. I'll let you fill in whatever blanks need to be full in. But as you know, let's give a warm welcome to Rabbi Geoff Basik.
I don't use the word friend lightly, but Mark and I are friends. So I think that says it all.
And it's not even dependent upon how this night goes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Dan Glazer is here. So, welcome, Dan. Well, Dan is the product control manager of everything at Mosh. Yeah,
Quality
well, and he's muted,
quality
which is
control.
yeah, which is a good thing because Dan, yeah, did you want to say something?
Yeah, what were you saying? Product
You're
control?
the product, you're the quality control manager,
Uh-huh.
everything every here at Mosh.
And I want to say that I failed miserably. The
And Brian Parker from California, fantastic. All
Um,
right, take it away, Reb Jeff.
okay, first of all, thank you for sharing this time with me. Why don't we begin with a bracha for Torah study, right? So let's do that together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ruach haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So la'asok is, to busy ourselves with. And Torah kind of writ large. Um, so I wanted to begin tonight with a current reflection on anti-Semitism because it's relevant, not only for Hanukkah, but this is the moment we're in. This is the train we're on, apparently. So a current reflection about anti-Semitism, and perhaps at the end we'll reflect on some of the moral complexities that we're in, but we'll focus on Hanukkah, something different, something new, I hope. Are any of you familiar with a writer named Dara Horn? Dara Horn? Yeah, she teaches Hebrew and Yiddish literature. She's also written a couple of novels. So she has a really interesting understanding of anti-Semitism, that it's a response, or it's a reaction to the challenge of and resistance to Jewish particularity. So she thinks of things in terms of kind of universalizing hegemonic cultures, like Hellenism, right? Hellenism was that universal, unifying, global culture of its day. And so there is a desire to eradicate Jews, at the root of which is a denial of difference, not allowing particularity. So the first little thing I'd like to share, I'm going to screen share something. Can you see a Jenkinson quote? All right, would someone read it for me, please?
There is mania for resolution in this culture, a sad insistence that differences should cease being different, that certainty and sameness should prevail, that mystery should surrender, that the stranger should stop being strange.
So this guy, Stephen Jenkinson, is the teacher of one of my wife's teachers. So he's making the same point that Dara Horn is making, that there's this impulse to eradicate difference. And the phrase that stuck out for me was certainty and sameness, right? And we're used to thinking of Hanukkah as a defense of authentic Jewish particularity, right? There's another side to it, and that's what I'm anxious to get to. But Dara Horn explains this notion of particularism versus universalism through the use of Hillel and Jesus, where Hillel said, what is hateful to you, don't do to others. The Jesus version is do unto others that which you would have them do to you, which is the presumption that everybody should be like you. Shake your head if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Right. So that the stranger should stop being strange, that everybody should be the same, that we should all, worship the same gods, eat the same foods, dress the same way, et cetera, et cetera. So that's point number one about, the nature of anti-Semitism. So it raises the question for me about this particular versus universal dynamic tension. And that's really what I want to focus on. We're all used to thinking of Hanukkah as the defense, religious freedom, right? That we have a right to worship the way we do. So now the Hillel and Shammai debate, some of which you're probably familiar with. Can you see this? The excerpt from Shabbat?
Yes.
Okay. So some of you are probably familiar with the lighting of candles two different ways. 1 and then 8, or 8 and then down to 1. So let's begin reading this. There's something other than that I want to get to. But would someone start reading this first Mishnah, this first little bit?
I can start.
Thank you, Dvorah.
The sages taught in a Bereta, the basic mitzvah of Hanukkah in each day to have a light kindled by a person, the head of the household, for himself and his household. And the mehadrin, i.e. those who are meticulous in the performance of mitzvah, kindle a light for each and every one in the household. And the midrachin, min ha-midrachin, who are even more meticulous, adjust the number of lights daily.
Okay,
Beit
now
Shammai,
we get to this, right?
Okay, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagree as to the nature of that adjustment. Beit Shammai say, on the first day, one kindles 8 lights, and from there on gradually decreases the number of lights until on the last day of Hanukkah, he kindles 1 light. And Beit Hillel say, on the first day, one kindles 1 light, and from there on gradually increases the number of lights until on the last day, he kindles 8 lights.
Thank you. So what do you all make of this? You can unmute everyone and let's have a conversation. So what's going on here? Or what do you understand from this?
They never agree.
Okay, what else?
Does light
the-
increase or does light decrease in the
Right,
world?
and Hillel would say that it is incumbent upon us to increase the holiness in the world. Right? Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, you know, a classic Hasidic teacher of the 18th century, in his Kedushat Levi, he says, we increase holiness in the world. And why? Because we recognize our smallness, our humility, our anava. But I do think that Shammai was onto something. I mean, we decided to go with Hillel for now, but Shammai was onto something. Let's go back to that screen share. Can we do that?
Yeah, you need to put it up again.
Okay, let's keep reading from the same page. Someone else? Thank you, Dan.
Ula said, there were two Amoraim in the West, Eretz Israel, who disagreed with regard to this dispute, Rabbi Yossi bar Avin and Rabbi Yosel bar Zavida. One said that the reason for Bet Shammai's opinion is that the number of lights corresponds to the incoming days, i.e. the future. On the first day, 8 days remain in Hanukkah. One kindles 8 lights, and on the second day, 7 days remain. One kindles 7, etc. The reason for Bet Hillel's opinion is that the number of lights corresponds to the outgoing. Each day, the number of lights corresponds to the number of the days of Hanukkah that were already observed. And one said that the reason for Bet Shammai's opinion is that the number of lights corresponds to the bulls in the festival of Sukkot. 13 were sacrificed on the first day, and each succeeding day, one fewer was sacrificed. The reason for Bet Hillel's opinion is that the number of lights is based on the principle one elevates to a higher level in matters of sanctity, and one does not downgrade. Therefore, if the objective is to have the number of lights correspond to the number of days, there is no alternative to increasing their number with the passing of each day.
Thank you. So in this reading, there is a hint that the story is not necessarily only about the defense of Jewish particularism, but it includes a universal vision. And the hint is the Sukkot business. So you all know, I'm sure, why Hanukkah is 8 days, right? Why is Hanukkah 8 days? It doesn't take 8 days to commemorate a victory. Do you know why it's 8 days? Anyone?
Well, it could be the miracle of the oil.
Right, so that was post facto. That was clearly, the rabbis
Right, made that
were
up.
biased against the Hashmonaim, the Hasmoneans, and military answers, Bar Kokhba and all that. So it could be that, but that's a later kind of justification.
It's related to Sukkot.
Exactly, right, there it is. Mark, did you want to say something too?
Well, I'm just going to add to that. It's related to Sukkot because the military victory happened. There was fighting going on during Sukkot.
Right, they couldn't celebrate Sukkot.
They couldn't celebrate during Sukkot, so they had to wait and to celebrate Sukkot. 8 days.
Right, so the 7 days of Sukkot and the 8th Shmini Atzeret, right? There's a really interesting thing about Sukkot, though.
Okay. Is there something about 8 being a mystical number, like 7 is completion and 8 is mystical?
Oh, that's lovely.
I feel like I've heard that. I don't know.
You know, I've heard that in terms of the 7 chakras, that there's traditionally 7 chakras up, and then there's an 8th one that hovers around 6 inches above your head.
It's Keter.
It's what?
Keter. Never mind.
Keter, right? Keter, absolutely. Let me see if I wanted to read this part. Yeah, we might as well read this. Dan, would you continue reading about Rabbi Bar Hana?
Rabbi Bar Hana said that Rabbi Yochanan said, there were 2 elders in Sidon, and one of them acted in accordance with the opinion of Beit Shammai, and one of them acted in accordance with the opinion of Beit Hillel. Each provided a reason for his actions. One gave the reason for his actions. The number of lights corresponds to the bulls in the festival. And one gave the reason for his actions. The number of lights is based on the principle one elevates to the higher level in matters of sanctity, and one does not downgrade.
So the bulls, I want to share something from the book of Numbers about the bulls. Now we're on to something. I really think that Shammai, knew what he was talking about. Okay. We need a mathematician here. So on the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall observe a sacred occasion, not work at your occupations 7 days. And then the 8th, of course, is Shmini Atzeret, or the equivalent of. You shall present a burnt offering, an offering by fire of pleasing odor to Adonai, 13 bulls on the first day. Scrolling down, 12 bulls on the second day, 11, 10, 9, 8, and 7. So can someone add them up? 13, 12, 11, 10. What do they add up to?
Well, that's a lot of bull.
It's a lot of bull. It's a lot of bull. But what do they add up
You could
to?
throw him out, Jeff, anytime.
No, I appreciate that.
So
what
I
does it add
have
up to?
I have the
Somebody add
answer
it
if
up.
nobody else has it.
46, isn't it?
No.
No, add again.
Oh,
50?
Keep
No.
going.
Down to
Wait.
1, right?
So this is a number that,
Oh,
say it again.
70?
Exactly.
Woohoo!
Right.
You are now
So we're used to hearing the number 70 because it's that number for totality, for 70 languages at Sinai, right? 70 nations, 70 gods, each one a guardian angel of a nation, right? So the Jews are offering sacrifices, according to Shammai, on behalf of the world. This is not just the Jews. It's not just particular. It's not just us, right? That we are atoning for their malfeasance. Here's the point. We live on the same planet. We share a common fate. Jewish virtue may not alone be sufficient to assure the coming year's reign. Common fate means a universal kind of outlook, right? We're all in this together. I'd like to say something about it not being about us versus them. It's about I and we. Like there is no I without a we. And there is no we if there's no me, right? So it's a little bit of a kind of reframing of the us versus them, or us first and forget about you, or, what we're used to hearing about. We live on the same planet. We share the same fate. So this is Shammai being universalistic, much like Isaiah, right? Isaiah says something to the effect of, my house shall be a house of prayer for all peoples. Mark, what did you want to?
I was going to say, Ki Beiti Beit Tefillah Mikol Amim.
There you go. Good.
Which is exactly what Rabbi Geoff just said, that my house shall be. So it's aspirational and universal.
Right. So the 70 nations is kind of a shorthand thing, though, for the 70 gods of the ancient Western Semitic culture. And 70 being that number of totality, like 70, Jacob's 70 sons going down to Egypt, right? Or there were 70 nations that came out of Noah's 3 sons.
So how does this jive with the idea of the chosen people, which sounds and looks very particularistic?
Good question. So I think Shammai would say that every nation is chosen for a specific role, right? So Jews have a role to play, much like every part of your body has a particular function, right? So it's
Reb Zalman would say that as well.
Yeah. So it's not about chosen and election for reasons of superiority. That's why I'm a Reconstructionist rabbi, by the way, because of the change in liturgy that says, Asher bacharbanu im kol ha'amim, who has chosen us with other nations, because everybody's special in their way. So there's a woman who teaches biblical studies at Bar Ilan by the name of Noah Ayali, and she's a great scholar. But she's saying that Shammai is pointing to this notion of all the gods, the 70 and Yud He Vav He, right? And we're enlisting everybody's support to assure that rain will fall and crops will grow and we will survive another year. Because Sukkot is, after all, a rain dance. And, rain doesn't know boundaries. Rain doesn't know ethnicity. Rain doesn't fall on just the Jews. You with me so far? Mm-hmm. So now we can see that nothing is really cut and dried, black and white and simple, right? It's not that you're either particularistic or you're universalistic. It's kind of both, right? You can hardly have one without the other. There's the I and the we. Though we're taught in a kind of reductionist, oversimplified way that it's us versus them. And even Dara Horn says that there's a hegemonic culture trying to squash us, but it's not that clear. It's not that simple. If you were to characterize yourself as either particularistic or universalistic, do you have a sense of yourself where you fall on that spectrum? Shake your heads, or yes, no, maybe so. Right, somewhere on that spectrum. So in this regard, yeah.
Well, it's hard, of course, which is your point, that it is a spectrum and maybe situational. But it's also interesting in terms of the United States where we talk about everybody's equal and there's individual rights, but then we also talk about the rights of groups, persecuted groups, minority groups, cultural, ethnic groups. We're not as much talking about a melting pot where everybody ends up the same, but as a salad bowl, where there are tomatoes and there are green peppers, and they're not all supposed to be mushed together, but each has a special role in the salad. So even in the United States, we have that tug of war legally and culturally.
Right, and there are voices of hegemonic, dominating culture. Like this might be a Christian nation, a white Christian nation.
Right.
Right, that kind of thing, right? So Hanukkah is really, for a minor little holiday, it's really deep, it's really profound, and it speaks to something going on right now. And I'll share a kind of ongoing debate that I have with my own wife and children concerning the current war in Gaza. So it's no secret that there are competing values and moral quagmires, because everywhere you turn, it's difficult. But conflicting and competing values. For me, just speaking for myself, I'm outraged about the hostages. And I think Pidyon Shvuyim, the redeeming the captives, is among the highest virtues or values that I can think of. And the safety of Israelis, despite the fact that I might disagree with them politically vehemently, the safety of Israelis, the eradication of today's Amalek, For others, my wife and my kids, mostly, they come down on the side of the Palestinian civilians in Gaza, right? They want to take a kind of broader human rights perspective, right? And I feel like this is a reflection, I guess, through the prism of particular and universal. So I want to be particularistic, thinking about concentric circles, that notion of kinship ethics, which is to say, the only way I know how to love my neighbor is by loving my kids. And the only way I know how to love my community is by loving my neighbor. And then those concentric circles, right? As opposed to 70 nations, right? We're all in the same boat all the time. And finally, to underscore this point about us versus them, which again is the easy way to tell the Hanukkah story. But there is a, what does he call himself? Sort of a professor at Stanford in both the psychiatry and the bio something or other by the name of Dan Siegel. Have you ever heard of this Dan Siegel? So Dan Siegel has coined this notion of MWE, the M/WE, MWE. So there's a me and there's a we, but really the two are symbiotic. And I think that Shammai was onto this, that if we're going to light candles, we're going to light candles for the world, because the world is in darkness. Not just for Jews. It's not our little holiday. How quaint. And what do you do to reflect this viewpoint. We do something very serious, very significant. We put the Hanukkah in the window, right? So the whole world can get this light. It's not just for us to gather around our dining room tables. That's nice for Shabbat. But Hanukkah is both particular and universal. Both Hillel and Shammai, right? Both I and we. So let me pause here for a second and get some reaction. How does this land for you? What are you hearing? Dvorah?
Well, it sounds like you're talking about the definition of non-duality, that everything is connected. Everything is connected. So if I'm hurting, you're hurting. If the trees are hurting, my neighbor's hurting. Like it's all
If
connected.
the rain doesn't come from my crops, it's not coming from yours, for yours.
And it means that we are part of everything. Everything is part of the same thing.
Thank you. What else?
I have a question.
Sure. Hello, Brian.
Yeah. It seems like if you take this universalism out, I guess the question is, why bother being a Jew, especially today? Why take the hassle? Let somebody else light the candles. Why take the chance? Why, engender so much hatred?
You want to take a crack at answering that? What's your answer?
I guess I'm a particularist. I know I'm a Jew, and honestly, when I know that what's happened in the past and what's happened, in the far past, and what happened on October 7th, and I have a tough time, living in a universal world. It doesn't work for me.
Right. I have an answer.
Why be a Jew?
So I think that Judaism, as a wisdom tradition, has a lot to offer. And if that's the case, then it takes Jews to maintain this wisdom tradition. But I don't think it's only for Jews. I think the Jewish wisdom tradition has a lot to offer the world. Right?
But they hate us so much.
Yeah, well, where does that come from? It's a disease on their part, right? It's a disease on their part for jealousy or for one reason or another. Dara Horn offers her answer, but I really feel like Erwin Kula, who used to run CLAL, an organization in New York, the Center for Learning and something or other. Leadership and learning, right? And it was Yitz Greenberg's thing. And he's kind of a universalist. And I think that he used to go around saying that we can be rabbis to non-Jews because the wisdom tradition has something to say and offer to the world. And Hanukkah is one of them. If you frame it not necessarily in the us versus them way, right? It's the light shines on everybody. The darkness encompasses everybody, right? So I just wanted to give a shout out to this kind of impulse, because Shammai is so buried. Like nobody really cares about what Shammai had to say, but he had a lot of good stuff to say, So someone else, how does this land?
Can I just jump in here for a second? I just want to raise up, Brian, your question because it's a very challenging one and a difficult one. And I think it's one that we might want to think about presenting on anti-Semitism either for one Wednesday night or a series of Wednesday nights. The question that you pose is, what's the point? I think this is how I heard it. If everyone hates us, and we've certainly discovered that. How do we be an or lagoyim? How do we be a light to the nations? So how do we fulfill our, let's call it godly plan, or however you understand that, at the same time manage to live and outlive all of those 70 nations, right? There's something here, as Rabbi Geoff is pointing out, in our wisdom literature and the way we live our lives from day to day, that is pointing to something beyond. You know, that there's a reason why Hatikva, the hope, is the national anthem for many Israelis, not all Israelis. So we can look at particularism and universalism that way as well. I mean, I don't think Arab Israelis are singing those words. And we can go in that direction and talk about that as well. So I want to thank you for raising that question, Brian, and I'm going to bookmark that perhaps for a later time to unpack it in the way that your question deserves.
Thank you.
Good. So someone else, how does this land for you?
Dan has his hand up.
Oh, good. Hi.
Yeah, but if I want to give other people a chance if they haven't spoken yet. Okay. No, I struggle with this presentation in a sense that I still think of Hanukkah as being somewhat triumphalistic and particularistic in terms of they tried to suppress us and convert us and change us and destroy us. We won, let's eat. And the so a lot of this to me, in my little understanding of what you're presenting is its spin to make it look better and a more universalistic holiday. It's I still see Hanukkah as being a very particularistic type of thing and triumphalistic. So I'm not yet sold on this.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, that has been the conventional, take on it, right? But buried in the literature, buried in that little bit of Talmud that we read, is a hint of something else, right? So I know people, Reconstructionist rabbis, who are lighting the candles both ways, from 1 to 8 and from 8 to 1, and they're trying to say something, right? I mean, just like, Ula said that he knew of these two rabbis and one did it that way and another did it that way. We have permission, to kind of do it either way, I guess. But buried in the literature is a different take. And I just wanted to bring that out because of the debates going on these days. Circle the wagons and all the rest without that aspirational vision. So, your caution is well taken, I know,
Let me add to that, Rabbi Geoff, which is that if we are mourning the death of Gazans, if we look at ourselves as being universalists because we're doing so, fine. But we're also doing it within the tradition of caring for anyone who is suffering. All right, and to honor the stranger among our midst, et cetera, et cetera. I think the question that you posed, Dan, or the wrestling, it's not an either or because of that. We're not being traitors to Israel by feeling the pain of Gazans. The rabbis themselves have made a decision, which I was talking to Rabbi Geoff about before you all came on, long ago, not to emphasize the military victory that is part of the Hanukkah story, right? But rather on the miracle. So they made a choice too, but without abandoning the military victory, but putting more emphasis on the miracle. Why? For safety's sake, right? We're living in the diaspora in countries that we really shouldn't be emphasizing the story that, we rose up against the forces that were controlling us. So these kinds of wrestlings. You're a rabbi, Dan. You are raising up things that the rabbis struggled with as well, and that we're being welcomed and invited to wrestle with here tonight.
We're creating a page of Talmud, right?
I think also the connection with Sukkot is very significant. If during Sukkot what we're experiencing is the fragility of the structures of our lives, that's not only true for Jewish lives, that's true for all life. So I've always seen Sukkot as a very universal holiday as well. And so I think there's a connection there.
Yeah. So I hope this is new to some of you because it's really buried. Like we never hear about Shammai's reasoning was because of Sukkot and the 70 bulls for 70 nations and all of that. I hope it's news for some of you or eye-opening in some way.
I had never heard that before.
Who's speaking?
Me.
I
never heard that before. It's interesting.
It is, right? Right, it is.
Mitzi?
I have a question. I've heard that it was a civil war among Jews. And I know I was talking to a Chabad rabbi and I said, you want to celebrate with me, but you would have killed me. I'm a Hellenized Jew. And he was like, oh, no, you're not. But yeah, and that's a part that really upsets me, Is that why we ignore it?
Well, it's just one of the complexities of it. It was kind of a civil war, right? The toga wearing Jews and the talit wearing Jews, if you wanted to sort of, stage it, right? The Jews that circumcised, and those that didn't and sent their kids to the gymnasium, So it's a very relevant holiday. It has so many nuances and sort of aspects to it. So I hope I complexified it for you. There used to be a children's book writer who answered the question, how do you come up with these stories? He said, I just keep asking, how do you make it worse? How do you make it more complex, right? So I'm hoping to complexify this because it's very rich. And the oil thing, right? Who's that, Mitzi?
Our new rescue, Cisco, from Texas.
Is he Jewish?
Yeah, of course.
It doesn't matter. We can have universal dogs.
No, he is Jewish now.
I don't know about that.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
You all know the word for dog in Hebrew is kelev, right?
Yeah.
And kelev, if you break up the word kelev, it's like your heart. Anybody else? A reflection on the teaching? Oh, let's not see the same hands, Devorah Lesk. No, go ahead.
Well, I was looking for my mute. Unmute. Well, I had this other thought. It's an alternative thought because I knew about the 8 down to 1 and 1 to 8. I don't know that I knew it was Shammai and Hillel, but it means much more to me now that I'm studying more relevant things, Shammai and Hillel. And but as I was listening to you in the beginning, I was thinking about the fact that the idea of light if we were going from 8 to 1, then we would be also in order of this time of year, which as we go through each day, there's less and less light each day. Not noticeably maybe, but there is. But then you could look at it from the other side and say, pardon?
Depends on when Hanukkah falls, whether there's less and less or more light.
Hanukkah always falls on the 25th of Kislev.
Yes,
Right.
but the
that
light,
could be,
that's lunar. That if it falls
right.
after December 21st,
you're
it's
right.
a little
That's
more
right.
light each day.
You're
So
right. I remember a year that it was like that. That's right. Oh, thanks, Renee.
She pops in at important moments in conversations.
Important, yes.
But it is true. It must have originally been associated with the solstice, right? I
You
mean,
mean that it started at it?
well, it's just a fundamental human thing about where did the sun go? Please bring the sun and the light and the warmth back,
Right.
right? Yeah. Yeah. Gail, do you have a thought? Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate you hearing me out and just letting me spin this out as much for myself as for us tonight. So whenever you read that Hillel said this and Shammai said that, you can look at both, right? Because I think they're both onto something. Mark,
That sounded like a chatima to me, Reb Geoff. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, and I'm really in great gratitude to you for bringing this forward and for sharing with us some teachings that are not so well known. And I'm going to go check the last few years, whether I've taught on this, because if I did, this is yet another example of that. You have to study something 100 times before it really becomes integrated.
And each time it's different, right?
And
every Hanukkah, I'm looking for some new insight.
For sure. So I thought it might be fun, as speaking of adding a light into the world, to share with you before we bid adieu tonight. Where'd it go? Hold on a second. No, it's here somewhere. Oh my gosh, is it hiding?
Whoops.
Let me just pull it. I got to go to my history because I want to share with you. Oh, that's crazy. All right, talk amongst yourselves.
This is where Dan and his quality control comes in.
I did want to mention, though, Rabbi Geoff, that you, I believe, are the one who worked on the conversion for my niece's future husband. So this is Aviva Glazer and Jason Newley.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Aviva being Rick and Rachel's daughter.
Thank you.
Also,
how are they doing?
He also was at the wedding, presided at the wedding.
And what?
Their wedding, yes.
Their wedding. He presided at their wedding.
That too, yes.
Yes.
Good,
Okay.
they're wonderful. Thank you.
All right, I got it. So here's a little treat for you if you have never seen this before. This song that I wrote is actually, I think it's 30 years old. And it's a warning, both a warning that white boys shouldn't rap and also rabbis anyway. And number two, it is the Hanukkah story, totally completely told in a matter of 4 minutes and 13 seconds. So I'm going to share it with you, and just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. Here we go.
Please give it up for MC Let me tell you a story about days of old when the nights were long and the days were cold.
Alexander the Great, he was the king, you see, of the land of Judea, where the Jews were free to live and worship the only God, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Let me hear you now. Now Alexander the Great,
despite his royal fame, he grew old and died, ending his reign. A new king arrived upon the scene, a real pain in the tuchus, if you know what I mean.
Real mean. He gathered together
all of the Jews and said, listen closer, because I got bad news.
Really bad news.
King Antiochus, he thought he was wise. He said, you can't observe Shabbos or be circumcised. You have to pray to great Greek gods Israel and sacrifice pigs.
They squeal. Whoa, can't touch that. Bow, 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 bow. But bow down to idols of stone. Indeed, that's not being Jewish. Plain to see.
The Jews were afraid to disobey the king's order, then put to death like a lamb to the slaughter.
There was a righteous man in
Modine
town. His name was
Mattathias.
He refused to bow down. He smashed
the idols.
cried passionately,
Whoever's for the Lord our God, follow me.
If you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer. If you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer. Sing it with me. If
you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer. Come on, everybody sing. If you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer.
I know
you know the rest.
In the story, there are armies in
He's in this fight, and it gets kind of gory. Antiochus' army gets cut down to size by Judah and the Maccabees, the good guys.
Put your hands together. Then there's the cleansing of the temple and the search for oil.
Would triumph be spoiled?
They could only find one jar. They looked here, there, near and far. It's a solid fact.
A moment of mystery. Nes Gadol Hayasham. That's history.
History. If you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer. If you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer.
If you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer. If you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer.
There's one last point for your edification. Hanukkah's a time for your rededication. Be a modern Maccabee. Stand tall and hammer a world of peace and justice for all.
If you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer.
If you're a Maccabee, then you're a hammer. Peace, love, everyone. I'm MC Maccabee. Take it easy on the Latkes.
1990.
Whoa.
Wow. So there's two things I want to point out about that. Number one is from the particular story to the end, the universal. Right? Right? Be a modern Maccabee and stand tall. And the other thing I don't remember was, it was the fact that I wrote that a long time ago. Renee, even before we met. Oh, no.
There's something
I think there's something still playing on your computer.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Oh, sorry. You can hear something. No, it's not. Sorry. Okay. All right.
I see 1990, and I think that was just a few years ago. Wasn't that just yesterday? I can't believe that was 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, huh?
33.
So if anybody wants to link to that, I think it was it will be in tomorrow's email about the first night of Hanukkah. The video will be in there.
So
and
you
can
to
tell.
read your email.
That's right. And believe it or not, I checked today, it's had 3,600 views. in 20 years.
You're famous.
In 20 years.
It hasn't been up there like that for 20 years, so has it? You didn't make that 20 years.
I think it's pretty old. I don't remember. 11 years ago. It's 11 years. 11 years. Yeah. So let's give it up. Thank again, Rabbi Geoff Basik.
Thank you all.
And
thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you, my friend. And tomorrow night, first night Hanukkah, right here at 7:00. Who's leading tomorrow night, Devorah?
Devorah's leading.
Yeah, but she's muted, so she better remember not to unmute herself tomorrow.
Are you
I am leading tomorrow.
Are you doing 8 candles?
Pardon?
You doing 8 candles or 1?
Well, you'll just have to come to see. I have to clear space so I don't cause a fire right here. Oh, yeah. And coming on Saturday, Dan and Mary Rita are going to be leading on Saturday evening.
Wow.
So we have a full roster for the 7 days.
Fantastic.
Well, except we don't do it on Friday night, obviously.